Hi, I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy, with another Global Real Estate School podcast. Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy, and we are continuing on with our podcast over the Candidate Handbook for PSI. If you are getting ready to take the real estate examination, well, we're actually under a section called Real Estate Principles and Practices, and we're under Section D, subsection D, as in Delta, and we are on number 5, property ownership held in a trust or by an estate. So property ownership held in a trust or by an estate. So you need to know about trust and estates for the real estate examination. And we're going to kind of go over some of this information right now. So first of all, what is the definition of a trust? What's the definition of a trust? Well, a trust is a legal arrangement where one party, normally the trustor, gives another party, the trustee, the right to hold the title to the property or assets. So, we're talking about real estate, but it could also be assets for the benefit of a third party, the beneficiary. Okay, so let's don't make this too challenging or difficult. Let's just say you have children or a family member, and you want to give them assets or real estate, but you really want someone else to manage that for them. Maybe they're not of age, maybe they're not prepared or in a capacity to really manage the real estate or the assets. So you, as the owner of this stuff, whether it's real estate or assets, you create this arrangement. You are the trustee, the trustor, you're the creator, the trustor, and you give another party, who is now the trustee, the right to hold this property or the assets and really manage it for the benefit of this third party, your family member, children, or other close relatives, or whoever this person is. And that third party would then be the beneficiary, okay? So that's basically a trust. You're creating this for assets or real estate. You are the trustor, the creator of the trust. You give it to a trustee who's going to have fiduciary obligations, just like we've talked about in the course between agents and principals. So the trustee holds and manages the property in the trust. They have a fiduciary obligation. And you have the beneficiary. That's the person or the entity that actually benefits from the trust. If you hear a siren going off in the background, I'm recording this podcast from Nice, France, where I'm here doing some work for a real estate company. But so my apologies for that. So that's the definition of a trust. Now, there are two types of trust. A living trust, which sometimes is called the inter vivos trust, V-I-V-O-S, inter vivos trust, a living trust, okay? A living trust is created during the trustor's lifetime. So if sometimes people create trust while they are alive to make sure their children or whoever that they name as the beneficiary can can benefit from the assets or real estate. So if that's done during a person's lifetime while they are alive, we call that a living trust. A testamentary trust is created through a will and takes effect after the trustor's death. So we have a living trust and a testamentary trust. We already know the key roles, don't we? The trustor is the person who creates the trust. Trustee is a person or institution that holds and manages the property for the trust. And we say an institution. Sometimes I've handled real estate for banks and other institutions who wanted me to sell the real estate for the trust because they were managing it, distributing it, and it could either have been a living trust or a testamentary trust. Remember, living is while they are alive. Testamentary is after the trustor's death, the person who created the trust. And then we have the beneficiary. That's a person or entity that benefits from the trust. So why have a trust? I'm sure that's probably a question you're wondering right now. And there's lots of reasons and benefits of a trust. I mean, first of all, if you have a trust, it can avoid probate. My mom and dad had a trust, and when my mother passed away, my father had passed away first, and when my mother had passed away, the trust gave specific instructions on how to distribute the assets. Well, we did not have to go through any probate. And you say, well, what's the big deal about that, John? Well, probate, it's court, and court can take time, right? There's also some privacy with trust. They're not public records, and so a little bit more private. The management of the property, should someone become incapacitated or not able to take effect or handle the affairs of their real estate or assets. So there's some management opportunities there. And of course, there's potential tax benefits. Probably the two biggest items would be the avoidance of probate and privacy. It's not public records. So real estate can be held in a trust. My wife and I have some property or real estate we own, and that property is in our trust. So if something happens to us, the trust specifically explains what to do with the real estate for our two daughters, and it avoids probate. Now, the trustee, whoever is named as a trustee, remember I said they have fiduciary obligations? Well, they are, or have the authority, I should say, to manage, sell, or transfer the property according to the terms of the trust agreement. So all of that's spelled out in the trust agreement. So if you see a question that says, what's the primary benefit of placing real estate in a living trust? Remember, living's while the people are alive. Well, the answer is to avoid probate and ensure the privacy of the estate. So that gives you information on trust. Now, remember, the other item you need to know for the real estate examination, we're covering subsection 5 of types of ownership, property ownership held in a trust, which we just talked about, living or testamentary. Remember, living's while the people are alive. Testamentary goes into effect after the death. Or property ownership held in an estate. So let's think about this. An estate is all the property, both real and personal, that a person owns at the time of their death. Now, I know we were talking about freehold estates and non-freehold estates earlier. Freehold estates, fee simple to feasible. Remember, fee simple is the highest form of ownership you can have. Fee simple to feasible means there could be some restrictions or conditions. They're not going to get real in depth on the exam for that. But now we're actually talking about an estate. Think of an estate sale. And remember, I said an estate is all of the property, both real and personal, that a person owns at the time of their what? At the time of their death. So we have two different types of estates that I want you to know about. A probate estate. This is the process of distributing the descendant's property through court supervision. Okay? Court supervision. We also have a non-probate estate. This includes assets that pass directly to beneficiaries outside of probate. And think of non-probate estate items like life insurance, retirement accounts, a checking account where you are named as a beneficiary on that account. Those would all be non-probate estates. Probate estates, that's when we have to go to the court and distribute these specific assets. So there are two parties you need to know about that handle estates. The first one is an executor or a personal representative. Executor or a personal representative. That is the person named in a will to manage the estate. So I could have a will. I don't have a trust, remember, I just have a will. And if I have a will and I name John Smith as my executor or personal representative, then John Smith is the person I'm naming to manage the estate. But now remember, this still has to go through court. Okay? What if I don't name anyone in my will? If I don't name anyone, then we have to go to court, and the court will appoint an administrator. Okay? So if there's no will or executor or personal representative named, then the court will appoint an administrator. Now, you may say, well, how does the court determine who to appoint? Well, you're not going to have to worry about that for the real estate exam, but I'm certain it would be someone close to the family. It may not be, but the court's going to appoint an administrator who will then follow the provisions of the will and anything else the court might recommend or require. So the process of probate is really filing the will with the probate court. We have no trust. We do have a will. Maybe we don't have a will, but in this case, we have to go through probate. So we file the will with the probate court. Courts are backed up, so this could take some time. If you have a parcel of real estate and a house and it's sitting there empty, you have to wait for the court process, right? So that means you're going to have to cut the grass, keep the utilities going, go over there, maintain that property. It's always good to get good legal advice in case something like this were to happen. Some states, like Missouri, you can have what's called a beneficiary deed, and that would allow the property to immediately go to the beneficiaries. You don't have to know a lot about that for the examination, but again, seek legal advice. If there's no trust and you only have a will, you're going to have to go through court. If there's someone appointed as an executor in the will, they will need to follow the instructions of the will once the court determines the validity of the will and the other items that probate will require. If there's no executor or personal representative listed in the will, then remember the court will appoint an administrator to follow all of the provisions. So we have to file the will with the probate court, and the court's going to notify creditors and beneficiaries of what's going on. There's going to be inventorying of the estate's assets. So they're going to take an inventory of everything. They're going to pay any debts and taxes that the deceased person may owe, and they will distribute anything that's remaining according to the will or state law, if there's no will mentioned. So real estate in an estate, remember you have an executor or personal representative if they are named in the will. If not, the court will appoint an administrator, and they are responsible for managing the real estate, making sure all debts, back taxes, everything is paid, and then distributing anything remaining to the beneficiaries. And remember, if there's no beneficiaries, and you will have to follow the statutory state law as required to distribute those properties to next of kin in the order that would follow. So, who's responsible for managing the real estate in a probate estate? Well, the answer's the executor or personal representative if listed in the will. If no one's listed, the court will appoint an administrator. And again, don't forget, probate estate, that is distributing the descendant's property through court supervision. Non-probate estate would be those items like life insurance or any kind of investment accounts where you might be named as a beneficiary, okay? Trustees have authority per the trust document. We talked about that. Executors and administrators follow the will or the court's orders. And, just keep in mind, trust avoids taxes, avoids probate. I shouldn't say avoids taxes. What I meant to say was it limits taxes, but it avoids probate and can be very beneficial. But you need to know the differences between property ownership that's held in a trust or by an estate. And I think now you do. Well, you are going to need to be listening to these podcasts whenever you can, because they will help you pass the real estate exam on the first attempt. I know they will. Check us out at Global Real Estate School. We have some great flashcards. We have study preparation aids, lots of things there. I've got a great YouTube channel. I'd love for you to subscribe to that. Subscribe to this podcast. And as always, any positive feedback would be much appreciated. I hope this has been helpful for you. From the south of France, Nice, France, where I'm looking at the beautiful Mediterranean Sea and the sun coming up. But I wanted to make certain you knew another section from the PSI outline under Real Estate Principles and Practices, Property Ownership, Section 1, Subsection D, Types of Ownership, Number 5, Property Ownership held in a trust or by an estate. And now you know how to answer those questions correctly. Hey, as always, thanks for listening to the podcast. Go out and make it a great day. Thank you for listening to the podcast for Global Real Estate School. I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. Go out and make it a great day.